The Demon Lover by Shirley Jackson. She had not slept well. From 1:30, when Jamie left, and she went lingeringly to bed, until 7, when she at last allowed herself to get up and make coffee, she had slept fitfully, stirring awake to open her eyes and look into the half-darkness, remembering over and over, slipping again into a feverish dream. She spent almost an hour over her coffee. They were to have a real breakfast on the way. And then, unless she wanted to dress early, had nothing to do. She washed her coffee cup and made the bed, looking carefully over the clothes she planned to wear. Worried unnecessarily at the window over whether it would be a fine day, she sat down to read, thought she might write a letter to her sister instead, and began in her finest handwriting. Dearest Anne, by the time you get this, I will be married. Doesn't it sound funny? I can hardly believe it myself, but when I tell you how it happened, you'll see it's even stranger than that. Sitting pen in hand, she hesitated over what to say next, read the lines already written, and tore up the letter. She went to the window and saw that it was an undeniably fine day. It occurred to her that perhaps she ought not to wear the blue silk dress. It was too plain, almost severe, and she wanted to be soft, feminine. Anxiously, she pulled through the dresses in her closet, and hesitated over a print she had worn the summer before. It was too young for her, and it had a ruffled neck, and it was very early in the year for a print dress, but still, she hung the two dresses side by side on the outside of the closet door, and opened the glass doors carefully, closed upon the small closet that was her kitchenette. She turned on the burner under the coffee pot and went to the window. It was sunny. When the coffee pot began to crackle, she came back and poured herself coffee into a clean cup. I'll have a headache if I don't get some solid food soon, she thought. All this coffee, smoking too much, no real breakfast, a headache on her wedding day. She went and got the tin box of aspirin from the bathroom closet and slipped it into her blue pocketbook. She'd have to change to a brown pocketbook if she wore the print dress. And the only brown pocketbook she had was shabby. Helplessly, she stood looking from the blue pocketbook to the print dress, and then put the pocketbook down and went and got her coffee and sat down near the window, drinking her coffee and looking carefully around the one-room apartment. They planned to come back here tonight, and everything must be correct. With sudden horror, she realized she had forgotten to put clean sheets on the bed. The laundry was freshly back, and she took clean sheets and pillowcases from the top shelf of the closet and stripped the bed, working quickly to avoid thinking consciously of why she was changing the sheets. The bed was a studio bed with a cover to make it look like a couch, and when it was finished, no one would have known it was she had just put clean sheets on it. She took the old sheets and pillowcases into the bathroom and stuffed them down into the hamper, and put the bathroom towels in the hamper too, and clean towels on the bathroom rack. Her coffee was cold when she came back to it, but she drank it anyway. When she looked at the clock, finally, and saw that it was after 9, she began at last to hurry. She took a bath, and used one of the clean towels, which she put into the hamper, and replaced with a clean one. She dressed carefully, all her underwear fresh, and most of it new. She put everything she had worn the day before, including her nightgown, into the hamper. When she was ready for her dress, she hesitated before the closet door. The blue dress was certainly decent and clean, and fairly becoming, but she had worn it several times with Jamie, and there was nothing about it which made it special for a wedding day. The print dress was overly pretty and new to Jamie, and yet wearing such a print this early in the year was certainly rushing the season. Finally, she thought, this is my wedding day, I can dress as I please, and she took the print dress down from the hanger. When she slipped it on over her head, it felt fresh and light. But when she looked at herself in the mirror, she remembered that ruffles around the neck did not show her throat to any great advantage, and the wide swinging skirt looked irresistibly made for a girl, for someone who would run freely, dance, swing it with her hips as she walked. Looking at herself in the mirror, she thought with revulsion, it's as though I was trying to make myself look prettier than I am, just for him. He'll think I want to look younger because he's marrying me. She tore the print dress off so quickly that a seam under the arm ripped. In the old blue dress she felt comfortable and familiar, but unexciting. It isn't what you're wearing that matters, she told herself firmly, and turned in dismay to the closet to see if there might be anything else. There was nothing even remotely suitable for her marrying Jamie. And for a minute she thought of going out quickly to some little shop nearby to get a dress. Then she saw, It was close on 10, and she had no time for more than her hair and her makeup. Her hair was easy, pulled back into a knot at the nape of her neck, but her makeup was another delicate balance between looking as well as possible and deceiving as little. She could not try to disguise the sallowness of her skin, or the lines around her eyes, today, when it might look as though she were only doing it for her wedding, and yet she could not bear the thought of Jamie's bringing to marriage anyone who looked haggard and lined. "You're 34 years old after all," she told herself cruelly in the bathroom mirror. 30, it said on the license. It was 2 minutes after 10. She was not satisfied with her clothes, her face, her apartment. She heated the coffee again and sat down in the chair by the window. Can't do anything more now, she thought. No sense trying to improve anything last minute. Reconciled, settled, she tried to think of Jamie and could not see his face clearly or hear his voice. It's always that way with someone you love, she thought, and let her mind slip past today and tomorrow, into the farther future, when Jamie was established with his writing, and she had given up her job, the golden house and country future they had been preparing for the last week. "I used to be a wonderful cook," she had promised Jamie. "With a little time and practice I could remember how to make angel food cake and fried chicken," she said, knowing how the words would stay in Jamie's mind half tenderly, "and hollandaise sauce." 10:30. She stood up and went purposely to the phone. She dialed and waited. The girl's metallic voice said, "The time will be exactly 10:29. Half consciously, she set her clock back a minute. She was remembering her own voice saying last night in the doorway, 10 o'clock then. I'll be ready. Is it really true?" And Jamie laughing down the hallway. By 11 o'clock, she had sewed up the ripped seam in the print dress and put her sewing box away carefully in the closet. With the print dress on, she was sitting by the window drinking another cup of coffee. I could have taken more time over my dressing after all, she thought, but by now it was so late he might come any minute, and she did not dare try to repair anything without starting all over. There was nothing to eat in the apartment except the food she had carefully stocked up for their life beginning together, the unopened package of bacon, the dozen eggs in their box, the unopened bread and the unopened butter. They were for breakfast tomorrow. She thought of running downstairs to the drugstore for something to eat, leaving a note on the door. Then she decided to wait a little longer. By 11:30 she was so dizzy and weak that she had to go downstairs. If Jamie had had a phone, she would have called him then. Instead, she opened her desk and wrote a note. "Jamie, have gone downstairs to the drugstore. Back in 5 minutes." Her pen leaked onto her fingers and she went into the bathroom and washed, using a clean towel which she replaced. She tacked the note to the door, surveyed the apartment once more to make sure that everything was perfect, and closed the door without locking it in case he should come. In the drugstore she found that there was nothing she wanted to eat except more coffee, and she left it half-finished because she suddenly realized that Jamie was probably upstairs waiting and impatient, anxious to get started, but upstairs everything was prepared and quiet as she had left it. Her note unread on the door, the air of the apartment a little stale from too many cigarettes, she opened the window and sat down next to it until she realized that she had been asleep and it was 20 minutes to 1. Now suddenly she was frightened. Walking without preparation into the room of waiting and readiness, everything clean and untouched since 10 o'clock, she was frightened and felt an urgent need to hurry. She got up from the chair and ran across the room to the bathroom, dashed cold water on her face, and used a clean towel. This time she put the towel carefully back on the rack without changing it. Time enough for that later. Hatless, still in the print dress with a coat thrown on over it, the wrong blue pocketbook with the aspirin inside in her hand. She locked the apartment door behind her, no note this time, and ran down the stairs. She caught a taxi on the corner and gave the driver Jamie's address. It was no distance at all. She could have walked it if she had not been so weak, but in the taxi she suddenly realized how imprudent it would be to drive brazenly up to Jamie's door demanding him. She asked the driver, therefore, to let her off at a corner near Jamie's address, and after paying him, waited till he drove away before she started to walk down the block. She had never been here before. The building was pleasant and old, and Jamie's name was not on any of the mailboxes in the vestibule, nor on the doorbell. She checked the address. It was right, and finally she rang the bell marked "Superintendent." After a minute or two, the door buzzer rang, and she opened the door and went into the dark hall, where she hesitated, until a door at the end opened and someone said, "Yes." She knew at the same moment that she had no idea what to ask, so she moved forward toward the figure, waiting against the light of the open doorway. When she was very near, the figure said, "Yes," again, and she saw that it was a man in his shirt sleeves, unable to see her any more clearly than she could see him. With a sudden courage, she said, "I'm trying to get in touch with someone who lives in this building, and I can't find the name outside." "What's the name you wanted?" the man asked, and she realized that she would have to answer. "James Harris," she said. "Harris." The man was silent for a minute. Then he said, "Harris." He turned around to the room inside the lighted doorway and said, "Margie, come here a minute." "What now?" a voice said from inside, and after a wait long enough for someone to get out of a comfortable chair, a woman joined him at the doorway, regarding the dark hall. "Lady here," the man said. "Lady looking for a guy named of Harris lives here. Anyone in the building?" "No," the woman said. Her voice sounded amused. "No men named Harris here." "Sorry," the man said. He started to close the door. "You got the wrong house, lady," he said, and added in a lower voice, "or the wrong guy," and he and the woman laughed. When the door was almost shut, and she was alone in the dark hall, she said to the thin-lighted crack, "But he does live here, I know it." "Look," the woman said, opening the door again. "It happens all the time." "Please don't make any mistake," she said, and her voice was very dignified with 34 years of accumulated pride. "I'm afraid you don't understand." "What does he look like?" the woman said wearily, the door still only part open. "He's rather tall and fair. He wears a blue suit very often. He's a writer." "No," the woman said, and then, "Could he have lived on the 3rd floor?" "I'm not sure." "There was a fellow," the woman said reflectively. "He wore a blue suit a lot. Lived on the 3rd floor for a while. The Roysters let him their apartment while they were visiting their folks upstate." "That might be it. I thought, though, this one wore a blue suit mostly, but I don't know how tall he was," the woman said. "He stayed there about a month." "A month ago is when—" "You ask the Roysters," the woman said. They come back this morning. Apartment 3B. The door closed defiantly. The hall was very dark and the stairs looked darker. On the 2nd floor there was a little light from a skylight far above. The apartment doors lined up. 4 on the floor, uncommunicative and silent. There was a bottle of milk outside 2C. On the 3rd floor she waited a minute. There was the sound of music beyond the door of 3B, and she could hear voices. Finally she knocked and knocked again. The door was open and the music swept out at her. An early afternoon symphony broadcast. "How do you do?" she said politely to the woman in the doorway. "Mrs. Royster?" "That's right." The woman was wearing a house coat and last night's makeup. "I wonder if I might talk to you for a moment." "Sure," Mrs. Royster said, not moving. "About Mr. Harris." "What Mr. Harris?" Mrs. Royster said flatly. "Mr. James Harris, the gentleman who borrowed your apartment." "Oh, Lord," Mrs. Royster said. She seemed to open her eyes for the first time. "What did he do?" "Nothing. I'm just trying to get in touch with him." "Oh, Lord," Mrs. Royster said again. Then she opened the door wider and said, "Come in," and then, "Ralph!" Inside the apartment was still full of music, and there were suitcases half unpacked on the couch, on the chairs, on the floor. A table in the corner was spread with the remains of a meal, and the young man sitting there for a minute, resembling Jamie, got up and came across the room. "What about it?" he said. "Mr. Royster," she said. It was difficult to talk against the music. "The superintendent downstairs told me that this is where Mr. James Harris has been living."